everything to do with the way they feel. So I'm going to ask you to, first of all, this is the food and health series. This is the food and feeling series. And as I mentioned, we will be you know go looking at your and unpacking how your feelings affect the food choices that you make. I want to thank blackdoctor.org for having me and for partnering with me to do this series. Um, so let's just get into it, right? Um, all of the Black doctors on blackdoctor.org, welcome. For everyone in attendance, you could have been anywhere, but you chose to spend this time with us tonight. And so I am especially grateful to you. We are here to talk about how your food choices are impacted by the way you feel. And what does that mean? So, a lot of people call it's a lot of people call it emotional eating. Other people don't want to use that word, don't want to use that phrase. It's okay. It's just this is just about the fact that have you that you could make a food choice on the basis of the way you feel. Now you know what I'm talking about. You get sad, you have a bad breakup, something might have gone wrong at work, something went wrong in a relationship and it went south. You didn't know how to process it. And so what do? You look for a pint of Ben and Jerry's, right? And you keep eating and you keep eating until the bottom you're at the bottom of the pint of the box. And the next thing you know, you've eaten the whole thing. Why? Because you had an event, could have been catastrophic, or it could have been something small, but whatever it was, it unnerved you. You felt a certain way, which is outside of what you would prefer to be feeling. It's not happiness. This is about your feeling sad. It's about your feeling depressed. It could be about your feeling angry. It could be about your feeling frustrated. There are a world of feelings that are affected and run by our food choices, right? That are connected to the food choices that we make. So, what are those choices? What are the things we choose in those times of upset, those times of anger, those times of feeling something other than good, right? Um, let's talk about it. And I'm going to ask you some questions. But as I do, if I tell you, if your answer is yes, I want you to put a 1 in the chat. If your answer is no, I want you to put a 2 in the chat. I'll reiterate that again when we get there. But let's get right to what this phenomenon of how you choose certain foods to eat based on your feelings and why. Tonight, we're here to talk about the why. So, the why has everything to do with going way back in your past. I mean, going back to your childhood. That's where the why really begins for most people. For most of my clients, I coach women and families through the dastardly phenomenon of emotional eating. And for the most part, the it has everything to do with something that happened in your past. Now, let me start by saying this. Okay, there are, 57% of Black women are obese. I've been doing this work so long that I remember when 1 in 4, which would have been 25%, um, Black women were obese um, or overweight. Then we got to the point where 1 in 2 Black women were obese. And now we're over. It's like if you put 2 of us in a room, no matter who we are, if you put 2 of us in a room, 1 of us is going to be obese. Now it's that plus, okay? And believe it or not, a lot of the obesity has a lot to do with emotional eating. Because we have unchecked feelings, unresolved feelings, we have unresolved trauma, we have unresolved that all these unresolved, issues that we carry with ourselves. And we're going to talk about that over the course of this month, because there are a lot of things that happen as a result of having unchecked and unresolved feelings and emotions. Okay. So given the fact that 57%, over half of all Black women is not just overweight, but is obese, right? Clinically obese. We're talking about 40 pounds and up. A lot of this is we don't feel good about ourselves. A lot of it has to do with our self-esteem. And some of the self-esteem comes from what you've been through. There's an expression that talks about how we don't look like what we've been through. Well, that's good. And it sounds good. But if in fact you gain 50 to 100 pounds because you've been eating your feelings, and that's what we're talking about, then yeah, we do look like what we've been through. And we can do something about it. That's the good news. We can do something about it. Now, this is a conversation that includes weight loss, and we're going to talk about that later in the month too. But it's really about you. I want to get to you, what you're feeling, and how you process those feelings, and why. Like, why are you processing those feelings in this way? I want to give you some tools to help you to process your feelings in a healthy way. And I want to give you some information to help you to understand this is why I do what I do, right? So if in fact you find yourself looking for something smooth, something creamy, something that makes you feel warm and tingly inside, maybe it's that you have feelings of depression. Maybe it's that you have, feelings of sadness. Maybe, because you want to feel warm and tingly inside, right? And the way you feel, that you think, if you're an emotional eater, then for the emotional eater, in the mind of an emotional eater, it is, I just want to feel good. I just want to feel better right now. So sugar, a lot of people call themselves sugar addicts. I'm a sugar addict. Some people say, oh, I'm a stress eater. It's all the same thing though. It is. It's all the same thing. It's all emotional eating. And it all has to do with processing your feelings by eating specific foods and eating them in abundance, by the way. Right? So we're not talking about chomping down on carrot sticks. This is not what that is. We're talking about you go to mashed potatoes, creamy mashed potatoes and gravy. You go to fried chicken. Sometimes if you're angry, you choose the foods that you can crunch, foods that you want to crunch down on, to have a crunch because you need to get out the anger. But if you're feeling feelings of sadness and being forlorn, all of those kinds of feelings, disappointment, rejected, all of those kinds of feelings, hurt in whatever way that is. Most people choose foods that are an abundance of sugar and fat. Okay, so fried chicken, ice cream, definitely, mac and cheese, mashed potatoes and gravy. The more gravy, the better. Biscuits and gravy. You sopping up the biscuits with gravy or syrup. The point is, if you try to negotiate whatever it is that you're feeling in the midst of your pain, what we got to do is stop. And the first thing you have to do is ask yourself what you feel. What am I feeling right now? Because a lot of people don't know. Believe it or not, they are acting out, but they don't know why. And a lot of people don't know what started it from the very beginning. Again, back in childhood. For example, if you were given as a kid, let's just say your mother gave you chocolate chip cookie to feel better. You feel sad. And she goes, oh, I've got some cookies for you. From your childhood, if you started getting cookies, guess what? it is possible that for the rest of your adult life or into your adult life, you see food and food that makes you feel good in the moment. You see that as the resolve, the resolution for your problem. And it isn't, because it's another problem. Because we know that all of those foods pile on pounds, and then, sets us up for obesity, which sets us up for, the diseases that we suffer from disproportionately as Black folks. And that is hypertension, heart disease, some forms of cancer, about 13 forms, as a matter of fact. It just on and on. So the thing is, diabetes, type 2 diabetes, all of these chronic diseases start for many people in the habits that they develop over a lifetime. So the habits that first began in childhood. And if it didn't begin in childhood, somewhere along the line, you learn to soothe your pain with food. And typically, and the number one soother, it happens to be sugar. And sugar is a toxin to the body, just so you know, and it has no nutritional value whatsoever. Its only value is calories. And who needs those if you got too many? But it is literally a toxin to the body. So we resort to sugar, whether it's ice cream, whether it's a cheesecake, and I do mean a whole cheesecake. I know people that will down a whole cheesecake if something bad, really bad goes wrong, goes awry in their day. If that's you, here's what I need you to do. I want you first to acknowledge that you're feeling whatever it is you're feeling, and I need you to identify it. So what do I feel in this moment? Ask yourself that. If you're sad, if you're angry, if you feel unloved, if you feel unsupported, if you feel, any of those kinds of feelings, stop and ask yourself, what am I feeling? And I want you to write it down in a journal or a book, whatever you have. I need you to write it down, but I want you to write it down in a journal or a book because I want you to be able to go back to it, right? What am I feeling? And then after you decide, here's what I'm feeling sad. Why? Why do I feel sad? And when did in circumstances like this, at what age, at what stage in my life did I start to feel sad? Why was this my go-to position? And the other thing, and the next thing, and this is a big one, once you've decided, what you're feeling, I need you to ask yourself, what do I need? What do I need? Let's just say somebody is holding you to a responsibility that you really don't want. Let's say it's a parent. Maybe it's your mother. Maybe it's a father, but they're holding to a responsibility that's a little bit too much for you to handle because you got a lot of stuff going on in your own life, but you don't want to tell them no. What do you do? So what you need, maybe you need support. Maybe support is a thing that you actually need. I want you to write that down because you can't fix what you don't face. So if you don't know what you're feeling or why you're feeling it, we can't fix it. You can't move past that, and you stay in the perpetual loop of overeating, high calorie, high sugar, high fat foods in order to solve a problem. And that is really not the solution. This is a temporary solution or a temporary fix to a rather permanent problem if you don't address it. So all of your unresolved stuff, whatever your stuff is, if emotional eating, if resorting to food is what you do in the process of feeling whatever it is you feel, I'm saying you got to ask yourself what you're feeling, and then next what you need. And then not be afraid to ask of yourself what you need, to give it to yourself, and don't be afraid to give it to ask the other person. Maybe it's a person, as I said before, that's holding you to a standard that you can't commit. Maybe they need something from you. Maybe it's care. Maybe it's caregiving. Maybe it's, it could be, something happening with a child. Whatever it is, you have got to be able to say to yourself, I cannot do this. I cannot take this particular thing on. Therefore, I need to ask this person, hey, it would be really great if you would do X and Y for me. Because as women, you're last on your list. We put everybody else first. We've historically done that. We've historically put everyone before us. You put the kids before you. You put the grandkids before you. You put the parents, the neighbors, the church, and it goes on and on and on. We know that you put everyone last. You put yourself last and you put everyone first. You got to stop doing that. I need you to stop doing that. Because, as you know by now, I'm sure you've heard this before, when you don't have anything left for yourself if you give it all away to everyone else. So ask yourself, what am I feeling? Why am I feeling this? Like, when did I start feeling? When did this feelings creep in? When did it start creeping in? Because what we need to be able to do is catch and release the feeling, but we got to analyze and address what we're feeling. Because again, these unresolved issues that we're carrying around inside of us, not taking care of ourselves, they started a long time ago. A long time ago. So ask yourself, what am I feeling? When did it start? And then what do I need? Now, if you're unable to come up with what you need, I say take a beat. Take a beat. Allow yourself to feel whatever it is you feel. But you have to get to the point where the refrigerator or the freezer for the ice cream or the bakery or wherever you get the food that you decide to eat in that moment, the potato chips, the whatever, the corn curls, whatever it is that you feel, we've got to get to the point where that is not your first, your first resolution. That's not the first place for you to go. Because it still means that if you resort to food as a result of whatever the feelings are, you still haven't fixed the issue, the real issue. And the goal is to get to the real issue. The goal is not to eat in times of stress, not to eat in times of, feeling badly, not to eat in times of, pain, trauma. The goal is not to do that. The goal is to be able to develop a healthy relationship with food. Food was really made for sustenance. It was made to keep us healthy. It was made to, it was made to give you the power to do all the things that you do with your body every day. Walk, talk, blink your eyes, all of those things. That's what it was for. It doesn't know, by the way, and your body doesn't know breakfast food from dinner food, from lunch food. It just recognizes calories, protein, fat, vitamins, minerals, and water. That's how your body reads everything that you eat. But know this, if you choose to eat an abundance of foods that are made of empty calories, your body will respond in kind. That's how we get to be obese. That's where we get 57% of us obese. So, what can you eat for? Somebody wants to, what can you eat for better blood flow? First of all, I want you to know that your best choices overall are going to be, and you hear me, if you're familiar with me and my work, then you hear this all the time. It's going to be vegetables and fruit, because colorful vegetables and fruit. It's going to be lean protein. It's going to be healthy carbs, like quinoa, like red quinoa, which is really rich in protein and a really good carb option. But it's not about eating an abundance of bread and an abundance of cereals. So for blood flow, I would say, if you have a well-rounded diet, And you have those proteins, which should contain some animal protein if we're concerned about blood flow. Um, and you have a diet that is chock full of, colorful vegetables and fruit, um, a variety of foods, in other words, because the more variety and the more color, the pigments in those colors go a long way to stave off those chronic diseases that we talked about before. So, so I hope I answered that question. But the question of what do I do? What do I eat, when I feel sad, or what do I do when what do I eat when I feel angry? There are actually some workarounds for that, right? But again, and I'll give them to you, but again, I want to remind you that the goal is to develop a healthy relationship with food. So not the dysfunctional relationship with food that we have in the case of emotional eating. So let's just say you're angry. You want to crunch. Get some carrots. Get some baby carrots. Dip them in some hummus. You could have, sriracha carrot hummus, black bean hummus. It doesn't have to be just plain hummus. There are many varieties that taste really good and that are great for you. And hummus happens to be a good protein option. But, crunch on healthy foods rather than those that don't serve you well. So nuts, that's another way to go. You want to crunch down on some nuts. Crunch down because they work, and you can do all kinds of things with those. I mean, if you like chips, how about throwing some kale chips in the oven and sprinkling them with a little chili lime powder or chili lime? Yeah. So there are foods to eat, healthier foods to eat, healthier choices to make, depending on what the feeling is. But don't forget, you've got to unpack the feeling itself. We need to know what you're feeling, why you're feeling, and what you need in the moment. And that's something only you know for yourself. Right? If it's you want to feel warm and tingly, and there's something called banana and ice cream that I make. If you like ice cream, banana and ice cream, I have the recipe, I believe, is in my book and on my website. So go to everythingrow.com. I think it's even on my Instagram wall. Banana and ice cream happens to be we call it a nice cream because it's not actual ice cream, but it looks, and tastes and feels like ice cream. It has the same mouthfeel as ice cream. And it's really a frozen banana. And you could use this with any fruit. It's a frozen banana mixed with a little almond milk, and pulsed in a small food processor so that you get the consistency of ice cream. And you can do this with any fruit. You could do it with frozen strawberries. You could do it with frozen berries of any kind. You could do it with stone fruit, like, peaches or plums, which, by the way, are lowest in sugar. So berries and stone fruits will be lower in sugar. So you just mix that up with your almond milk and pulse it to the consistency of ice cream. Easy. It's easily done. So there are workarounds if you prefer a certain type of food in the moment. But let me just say this. From the moment we are in utero, we are born into a world that does everything with food. So it's not a surprise to me that people emotionally eat or eat their feelings. And because you are kind of taught, you're kind of taught to do so by the fact that when we celebrate, we eat food, we resort to food when we celebrate. Food is a great connector for people. So we eat and overeat when we celebrate. What's the first thing you do when you get a birthday? A birthday cake is made of sugar, okay? But if it were just that one time a year, that would be great. But that's not the case. And I think we all know that, right? So the thing is, and from the time you get, from the time you're born, what do you get? The baby cries. What does mom get? A bottle. Well, you got to feed the baby. The question becomes, does that baby grow up to resort to food because every time he or she cried or felt sad or whatever, they were offered food. See what I mean? So it's really insidious, and it is um it's sneaky. It's sneaky to the fact that you could find yourself an emotional eater because in your family that was the way of your world. Okay, when we get together, we're going to have big soul food meals, and and that's just the way of the culture in your family. And I'm saying to you, there's nothing wrong with that, but if it is to soothe, or to satisfy feelings that you don't want to feel, then we got to make some changes. And this is what we're talking about, unpacking the reasons, the why and the how, and then what to do, what to begin to do when you find yourself eating your feelings. Because a great number of people, and Black people, but the Black people especially, we are eating our feelings because we have a lot of stress in our lives. To be Black in America is stressful. And a lot of times that stress is handled temporarily by overeating high fat, high sugar, um, empty calorie foods, period. Right? So where do we go from here? How do we after you've asked yourself, well, what am I feeling, and you identify what you're feeling, and after you've asked yourself, well, what do I need, and you identify the needs. And a lot of people, by the way, can't identify the need, right? After you've asked yourself, well, what next? What do I do to stop doing this? What do I do to eat healthier? What do I do to eat better? What do I do to take better care of myself in this way? Well, first you got to feel it. And sometimes it's best to just let the feeling ride. I'm not trying to, and the reason is because to try to subvert the feeling just makes it worse, right? Instead of you, instead of you uh, you know, subverting the feeling, what happens is instead of getting like a pint of ice cream, you might end up with like a quart, right? In other words, you just want to eat everything because you haven't addressed it in the way that you're used to addressing, what makes you feel bad. So, it is in those cases, it is definitely better to not to try to subvert the feelings that you have. It is to ride them out, but definitely journal. Write down the experiences that you have throughout your day. Whether it was a bad breakup, or it was something happened at the job, or something happened with your boo, or something happened with the kids, whatever it was that led you to a place where you find yourself in a downward spiral, and eating foods that you really didn't want to eat, but you thought that they would make you feel better. The real deal is you got to address those feelings, and get real about them, and then make healthier choices in the moment. But this doesn't happen overnight, and I'm aware of that. Otherwise, I wouldn't do the work that I do. So if you have if you have questions about, to go deeper about what you do, like what kinds of foods you choose in those moments, or what kinds of other questions could you ask yourself in those moments so that you make different choices than those choices that you've made in the past, I'm here for you. We can do this. I'd like us to get healthy together. And we can do it in a way that works for you. Um, and over the next few weeks, we're going to be doing it. I want you to one of the things that I should have asked you to do was to ask to reach out to other people in your crew and ask them to join in this chat. Um, and you can still do it now. You can still do it now. Um, and I also want to remind you that we're going to be here next Thursday at 5 o'clock. And we're going to talk about other aspects of this problem and how to fix them. So if you have any questions, now is the time. Put them in the chat. If you have Uh-huh. If there's anything that you wanted to see covered, in this session, then put that in the chat too. Let's see where we are in terms of what you need. But the main thing is I need you to put yourself first. I need you to put yourself first in a way that you are serious about the changes that you're willing to make as it comes to your food and your feelings. Um, it is a devastating problem that in many ways has led to the obesity epidemic in America. And for us, I know that we just had this, Oprah just had a big, this big program about weight loss drugs and about obesity. But one of the things that came up was that obesity is a disease, right? But I'm going to tell you something. The number of people that fall in that disease category that she's talking about is far less than a number of people who are simply eating their feelings. And that has led them to obesity. Right? So we'll continue this conversation. If you have questions, put them in the chat. I will see them and answer them. And if there are other things that you want to talk about along this subject, we have some, I think, pretty interesting ways of getting into this conversation as we move on throughout the month. One of the things that, we talk about as it relates to food and feelings is the way we show up. The way we show up sometimes, and we have feelings that we're attached to that that are also a part of this. And it looks like something else, and we might call it something else, but I'm going to shed light on how we show up in the world because we haven't addressed the trauma. So how you get your current drama from your past trauma as before you started eating your feelings, or you started eating your feelings as a result of the trauma that you've been through, and you show up in the world with drama. But drama queens aren't just drama queens for no reason. Okay. Everybody's got something that he or she has dealt with. And this happens to be one of those things. And we'll get into that in the coming weeks. So tell your friends, all of your people to join us 5 o'clock on Thursday, every Thursday except Thursday the 18th. We're going to be here on Friday the 19th. But join us and come and get some information to help you to live a healthier, a better life, quite frankly. That's what we're talking about. So